I was still in uniform when the call came through. "Sir, there's a disturbance at your address. Possible noise complaint." My address. At first, I thought it was a mistake. My wife had planned a small backyard birthday party for our daughter. Cupcakes, music, kids running through sprinklers. Nothing crazy. But when I turned the corner onto our street, I saw the flashing lights, 2 patrol cars, neighbors gawking from behind their blinds, and right in the middle of it, my little girl, still wearing her pink paper crown, crying in front of a uniformed officer. Next to her stood Linda, our HOA president. Perfectly pressed blouse, clipboards. That smug smile she wore like a badge. She didn't know who I was. Not yet, but by the end of that night, she'd wish she never picked up that phone. Before that night, I thought I understood peace. It wasn't medals or titles that gave it to me. It was mornings in that quiet cul-de-sac, coffee steaming in my hands while my daughter, Emily, chased butterflies across the lawn. After 20 years on the force, I'd seen the worst humanity had to offer broken homes. Drunk drivers, domestic calls that ended in tragedy. So when we found that little 2-story house at the edge of Pinecrest Estates, I told my wife, "This is where we heal." She smiled, tired but hopeful. Then let's finally live, not just survive. The first few months were perfect. The smell of jasmine in spring, the sound of sprinklers at dawn, kids' laughter echoing between fences. The kind of suburban quiet I'd thought only existed in TV shows. And then there was Linda. Every neighborhood has one, the self-appointed guardian of the HOA rulebook. She ran meetings like a courtroom, waving citations like a judge's gavel. First, it was the color of our mailbox. Then, the unauthorized welcome mat. I used to laugh it off. "Pick your battles," my wife would whisper when I grumbled over her emails. I tried. God, I tried. Still, there was something about her, that calculated politeness that barely hid her contempt, like she was waiting for us to slip up. But Emily didn't care. She was 8, obsessed with sparkly shoes and strawberry cake. She'd spent weeks drawing her own invitations for her upcoming birthday party. Every crayon line was pure joy. "Daddy," she said one night, holding up a sketch of balloons and stick figures, "do you think the neighbors will come?" "Of course, sweetheart," I said, ruffling her hair. "Everyone loves cake." Except, apparently, Linda. 2 days before the party, she stopped my wife at the mailbox. "I hope you got the HOA memo," she said, voice sweet as poison. "No gatherings over 15 people, it's policy." My wife smiled, trying to diffuse. "Oh, it's just a few kids and parents. Nothing big." Linda's eyes narrowed. "Just make sure it doesn't get out of hand." That was the first crack in the perfect picture. That night I sat on the porch, watching the sun bleed into the trees. My badge sat on the table beside me, a weight I thought I'd left at work. I told myself not to overthink it. But something about the way she said it, out of hand, stuck with me, like she was already planning her next move. The morning of the party, the air smelled like frosting and fresh-cut grass. My wife was stringing up balloons, laughing with Emily as they struggled to tie the last one. "Help us, Daddy." Emily giggled. "You're the tall one." I reached up, looping the banner over the fence. The words, "Happy Birthday." Emily shimmered in gold against the sunlight. For a moment, it felt like everything I'd ever fought for. The long nights, the missed holidays, the scars I carried from the job had led to this simple joy. That's when I saw her. Linda, standing across the street, arms folded, clipboard in hand, watching every move like a hawk. She didn't wave, didn't smile, just wrote something down, and turned back toward her house. I remember telling myself, ignore it. It's her hobby. But somewhere deep down, a voice I'd learned to trust on the streets whispered, This isn't over. The day after the party invitations went out, things started to shift. Small things, the kind you almost miss until they pile up. A notice taped to our door. Reminder: outdoor decorations must be pre-approved by the HOA. A photo of our lawn in the HOA newsletter circled in red, labeled "Example of Overgrown Grass." And one afternoon, a voicemail from Linda herself. "Just a friendly heads up, Officer Hayes. We expect everyone to follow the same rules here, even you." I remember standing there, holding my phone, feeling that familiar pulse in my jaw, the same one I used to get during interrogations, when a suspect thought they were smarter than me. Still, I let it go. I didn't want Emily to see her dad angry again. I'd promised myself, and my wife, that this home was our sanctuary. But peace doesn't last long when someone's determined to break it. The party was on a Saturday. By Thursday, we had everything ready. Grill cleaned, decorations packed, even a small inflatable castle for the kids. My wife laughed, "You're worse than the event planner." And for the first time in months, I laughed with her. Then, Friday came. Around 7 p.m., I stepped outside to take out the trash. The air smelled like barbecue smoke and cut grass. Across the street, I saw Linda pacing with her phone, her voice sharp and fast. She kept glancing toward our house. When she noticed me watching, she smiled, that tight, rehearsed smile, and waved. "Evening, officer," she called out. "Evening," I said. Something in her tone made my gut tighten. 10 minutes later, I heard the ping of an incoming email. Subject: HOA Notice of Violation. Body: Noise curfew reminder. Please ensure that tomorrow's event concludes by 7 p.m. per section. 14A of the HOA Charter. 7 p.m. for an 8-year-old's birthday. I exhaled slowly, shut the laptop, and told myself not to take the bait. The next morning, the house smelled like sugar and joy. My wife was frosting cupcakes, Emily was singing along to her playlist, and sunlight poured through the kitchen windows like blessing. For a while, it felt perfect again. Until Linda appeared. She was walking the sidewalk, measuring tape in hand, stopping at every driveway like she was inspecting a construction site. I leaned over the fence. "Morning, Linda. You planning a parade?" She smiled that paper-thin smile. "Just making sure everyone's within HOA limits safety, you know." "Right. Wouldn't want the kids' balloons to violate the airspace," I muttered. She didn't laugh. She just kept measuring. Something about her precision felt personal. By noon, guests started arriving. Emily ran from car to car, squealing as her friends handed her gifts wrapped in pink and purple paper. My wife turned up the music, light pop, nothing loud, and the smell of burgers filled the air. For 2 hours, laughter ruled the cul-de-sac. Even some of the quieter neighbors peeked out, smiling. And then came the first complaint. A woman I barely knew, one of Linda's friends, approached holding a clipboard. "Excuse me, Officer Hayes? The HOA wants to remind you about community noise levels." I glanced at the sound meter app on my phone, 58 decibels, quieter than a lawnmower. "We're fine," I said. She frowned, scribbled something, and walked off. I tried to shake it off, but the peace had cracked again because when people like Linda smell control, they don't stop until you kneel. At around 4:30, I noticed her standing at her window, phone in hand. The blinds tilted just enough for her to see everything. Emily's laughter cut through the music, that high, pure sound that could melt stone, and for a brief second, I caught Linda's face. Not annoyance. Not boredom, envy. That's when I understood. This wasn't about rules. It was about resentment. Maybe she didn't have kids. Maybe she couldn't stand seeing other people happy I didn't know. But I knew the type, the ones who mistook control for purpose. Still, I held my tongue. At 6:45, I started to wind things down, music lower, kids gathering for cake. Emily blew out her candles, cheeks glowing in the candlelight, everyone cheering. And then, two cruisers turned onto the street. At first, I thought it was coincidence. Maybe a traffic stop nearby. But when they slowed down in front of our house, lights painting our lawn red and blue, my stomach dropped. An officer stepped out, young, nervous. "Noise complaint," he said. I looked over his shoulder. Linda stood at the curb, arms crossed, pretending to be concerned. Emily clutched my arm. "Daddy, did we do something bad?" My throat tightened. "No, baby, we didn't." I turned to the officer. "How loud are we talking, son?" He hesitated. Honestly, sir, it's pretty normal. But dispatch said the caller insisted it was excessive. Said there were adults drinking, loud shouting, possible safety issues. I stared at him, feeling that old, hot pulse of anger behind my ribs. "Did she tell you who lives here?" He shook his head. "No, sir." I looked at Linda, her smile widening when she realized I was watching. That was the moment she found her power. And she had no idea whose fuse she'd just lit. The officers looked uncertain, like they wanted to be anywhere else. One of them, Parker, a rookie I'd trained last year, met my eyes. I could see it hit him. Realization. "Chief Hayes?" he said quietly. Linda's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Evening, Parker," I said. My voice came out calm, too calm. Years of command training bearing the storm underneath. "You here for the birthday terrorists?" He almost laughed, then caught himself. "Sir, we just got the call." Had to respond. "I know," I said. "Protocol." Behind me, Emily's friends huddled together, whispering. My wife stood on the porch, arms folded, hurt flashing in her eyes. The air felt heavy, like the second before a storm breaks. Linda crossed the street, clutching her clipboard like a weapon. "Officers, I'm the one who called," she said. "There's been a clear violation of HOA policies and community noise ordinances." I turned slowly. "Linda, it's a child's birthday party. It's not even 7 yet." "It's about the principle," she said. "If you let one family ignore the rules, everyone thinks they can. It's not personal." But her eyes told a different story. Parker cleared his throat. "Ma'am, with all due respect, we didn't observe any violation." Her jaw clenched. "Well, maybe not now, but earlier." "Earlier," I cut in. "We were singing Happy Birthday, unless that's a felony now." She stared at me, and for the first time I saw something flicker behind her eyes. Not control. Not confidence. Fear, but she hid it fast. "Some of us value order, Chief, even if others don't." She turned, heels clicking on the pavement, and disappeared into her house. When the cruisers left, the silence that followed wasn't relief. It was shame. The kind that seeps under your skin. Emily wouldn't look at me. She just picked at her cake and whispered, "Did I do something wrong?" That broke me. "No, sweetheart," I said, kneeling down. "You didn't. Some people just forget how to be kind." But she didn't smile. She just nodded and walked back to her friends, quiet now. The laughter never came back that evening. The party ended early. Guests slipped away with awkward smiles, pretending not to notice the tension. By 8 p.m., the yard was dark. Balloons half deflated a smear of pink frosting on the deck. And across the street, through her window, I saw Linda watching. 3 days later, I found a certified letter in our mailbox. Subject: Formal violation. Unauthorized gathering penalty. $500 fine plus mandatory appearance before HOA board. Issued by Linda P. Donnelly, President, Pinecrest Estates. My wife's hands trembled as she read it. $500? For a kid's party? I took the letter, skimmed the jargon, and exhaled slowly. She's making it official. She's making it personal, my wife said, and she won't stop. She was right. The next week, the harassment escalated. A code violation for improperly stored trash cans, a citation for unapproved decorative lighting. Then, the final straw, a warning letter claiming our dog barked excessively at night. We didn't even own a dog. Each letter was signed with that same elegant signature, Linda P. Donnelly. By the end of the month, I'd had enough. I showed up at the next HOA meeting. The community center smelled of burnt coffee and cheap carpet cleaner, folding chairs in a circle, the usual retirees murmuring about lawn care and pool rules. When I walked in, the room went quiet. Linda looked up from her binder. "Chief Hayes," she said, smiling. "Didn't expect to see you here." "I got your letters," I said, "all of them." Her smile didn't falter. "Then you know we take community standards seriously." "Community standards," I said, "or your standards." A ripple of whispers moved through the crowd. She leaned forward. "Chief, this isn't personal. Everyone's subject to the same rules." "Funny," I said, "because I checked. Section 14A, noise curfew, doesn't apply to private events before 10 p.m. You made that up?" Her eyes flashed. "You're out of line." I stepped closer. "You're abusing authority you don't have. I've seen it before. Different uniform, same game." For a second, no one breathed. Then an older man in the back spoke. "He's right, Linda. You've gone too far this time." Her lips tightened. "This meeting is adjourned." She gathered her papers and left, fast. But as I walked to my car, I saw her again standing under the streetlight, watching. That smile was gone now. In its place, something darker. 2 nights later, everything unraveled. I was on shift, finishing paperwork at the precinct when my phone buzzed. "Unknown number," I answered. "Chief Hayes?" "Yes." "This is Officer Jenkins with Pinecrest Patrol. Sir, we received another call at your address, a possible disturbance." My heart sank. "My family?" "Yes, sir. Caller claims there's illegal fireworks, possible underage drinking. We have to respond." I was already running before he finished. The drive home felt like a tunnel. Headlights streaking through the dark, siren echoing in my ears even though it wasn't on. When I turned onto my street, I saw it again. Red and blue lights flashing across our lawn. My wife standing in the driveway, Emily clinging to her waist, crying. And Linda standing nearby, talking animatedly to the officers. My hands clenched on the steering wheel. I'd dealt with cartel enforcers, drunk cops, and domestic abusers, but I'd never felt rage like that. I parked, slammed the door, and strode over. "Officers," I said sharply. "Report." They turned, startled. "Sir, we didn't realize this is my house, my family?" "Yes, sir. The caller said—" "I know what she said." I looked at Linda. "You want to tell me what this is?" She blinked. "I told you chief rules are rules. Fireworks are prohibited." "There were no fireworks," my wife snapped. "Emily was playing with glow sticks." Linda hesitated but doubled down. "I heard loud pops. I had to call." "From inside your house?" I asked, stepping closer. She swallowed. "Yes." "You're lying." "Excuse me." I took a deep breath. "You've been harassing my family for weeks, and now you're filing false reports." Her face flushed. "You think you can intimidate me because you wear a badge." I looked her dead in the eye. "No, I think I can expose you because I know the law." For the first time, she didn't have a comeback. She turned, shaking, and stormed off toward her porch. But I knew. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something worse. Over the next few days, things got ugly. Someone spray-painted rule breakers on our fence. Trash was dumped on our driveway at night. And one morning, Emily's bike, her pink one with streamers, was gone. She cried for hours. That night, I sat on the porch with my service pistol beside me, not because I planned to use it, but because I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. I'd seen escalation like this before. In domestic disputes, gang wars, even police corruption cases. It always started small, then spiraled when pride took over. Linda had lost her control. Now, she wanted revenge. The breaking point came one Friday evening. I was just home from work, trying to unwind, when headlights flashed across our living room. Then, the sound. Glass shattering. I ran outside. A rock lay on the porch, wrapped in paper. On it, written in block letters, "Move out or be removed." My wife gasped, "Oh my God!" Emily screamed from behind her. That's when the fear turned to fire. I grabbed the rock, marched straight across the street, and pounded on Linda's door. "Open it!" I shouted. "Now!" The door creaked open. Linda stood there pale, eyes wide. "Chief?" I held up the rock. "This come from you?" She shook her head. I didn't." "Then who did? Because your little war just turned criminal." She stammered something about teenagers, neighborhood kids, random vandals, but her hands were shaking. Her eyes wouldn't meet mine. "Linda," I said quietly, "this ends now, or I'll make sure it does." I turned and walked away, my pulse hammering in my ears. Behind me, the door slammed shut. And I swear, in that moment, I knew it was far from over. That night, as I tucked Emily into bed, she asked me, "Daddy, are we still safe here?" I paused, looked around the room, the drawings on her walls, the stuffed animals, the nightlight glowing faintly blue. "Yes, sweetheart," I whispered. "You're safe. I promise." But as I stood there in the dark, listening to the creak of the house, I realized I wasn't sure if that was true anymore. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the floorboards made my hand twitch toward the pistol on the nightstand. Every gust of wind outside sounded like footsteps. By dawn, the tension in our house felt physical, like static you could touch. My wife tried to hide it from Emily, but kids sense fear. She didn't even want to go outside anymore. When she finally did, it was to check if maybe, just maybe, her bike had come back. It hadn't. Instead, there was another note taped to our mailbox. "You don't belong here." That was it. No signature, just those words in the same block handwriting. I took it down quietly. My wife stood behind me, arms folded tight. "We have to report this," she said, "officially." "I know. You're the chief. You can." But that was the problem. If I filed it officially, it would go public. Police chief embroiled in HOA dispute. The department would have to investigate. My family would be dragged through the mud. Linda would love that. Still, I couldn't do nothing. So I did what cops do best. I watched. That night, I set up a small motion-activated camera on our porch, hidden behind a flower pot. Nothing fancy, just enough to catch whoever was trespassing. The following morning, I checked the footage. At 2:37 a.m., a figure appeared, moving across the lawn, fast hooded, slim build. They crouched near the porch, then vanished back toward Linda's house. The footage wasn't perfect, but it was clear enough the silhouette matched her son. I didn't even know she had one until I saw him a few weeks back, unloading boxes from his car. Mid-20s, long hair, chip on his shoulder. Rumor was he'd moved back home after a DUI. Now he was harassing my family. I called Parker, the young officer from before. "Don't file anything official yet," I told him, "but swing by, quietly." He came over that evening. We sat in the backyard, laptop open, playback looping that shadowy figure again and again. "Could be him," Parker said, "but it's not conclusive." "It's enough for a visit," I said. He hesitated. Sir, should you be the one doing that? I looked at him. If I don't handle it, it escalates. He nodded slowly. Okay, but let me go with you. I shook my head. This one's personal. I crossed the street just as the sun dipped behind the trees. Her house looked immaculate. Same perfect lawn, same trimmed hedges, same fake welcome sign I knocked once. Linda opened the door halfway. Chief. Evening, I said. Mind if I talk to your son? Her smile was tight. He's not home. I leaned slightly, catching sight of movement behind her, a shadow crossing the hallway. Really? She shifted to block the view. If you're accusing him of something, I suggest you bring a warrant. I'm not accusing, I'm warning. Is that a threat? No, Linda, I said softly. That's me trying to protect you from yourself. She glared. Get off my property. The door slammed shut. I stood there for a long time listening to the echo. 2 nights later, the camera caught something else. A spark. Then smoke. I bolted out of bed. The air outside reeked of gasoline. Our mailbox, the same one Linda had complained about months ago, was on fire by the time I grabbed the extinguisher. The flames had spread to the bushes. My wife was yelling for Emily to stay inside. Coughing through the smoke, I doused the fire, heart pounding, until only blackened metal and ash remained. That's when I heard it. Faint laughter. From across the street, her porch light flicked off. I called it in this time. No more holding back. By morning, my front yard was lined with investigators. The smell of burnt plastic hung heavy in the air. Parker was there again, clipboard in hand. You think it's them? He asked. I know it is. He nodded, scribbling notes. We'll pull fingerprints. Maybe a match. I glanced toward Linda's house. Curtains drawn. No sign of life. But I could feel her watching. That afternoon, a detective from arson came by. He was thorough, polite, professional. But I could see the hesitation in his eyes. Investigating the chief's neighborhood wasn't exactly standard procedure. After he left, I stood in the yard staring at the charred ground, the smell of soot sticking to my uniform. It hit me then. This wasn't about the HOA anymore. This was hate. Personal. And people who act out of hate? They don't stop at property. They aim for the heart. The next few days blurred together. Interviews, statements, endless paperwork. Emily stayed home from school. My wife slept with a baseball bat next to the bed. And then, one night, everything broke. It was raining. Heavy. Relentless. The kind that makes the world feel smaller. Emily couldn't sleep, so I sat by her bed, reading her favorite story. Daddy, she said softly, can we move? The question hit harder than any bullet I'd ever faced. Before I could answer, I heard it, a sharp crack from outside. Not thunder, wood. Then the sound of glass. I rushed to the window. The front porch light flickered, then died. The camera feed on my phone went dark. Power cut. Stay here, I told my wife. My voice was steady, but my pulse wasn't. I grabbed my sidearm and stepped outside. Rain drenched me instantly, blurring everything into streaks of gray. Another sound, footsteps. I moved around the side of the house, light from the neighbor's porch faintly glinting off something metal, a figure. Hooded. Same build. Police, stop right there. The figure froze, then bolted toward the street. I chased, heart hammering. My boots splashed through puddles, the rain drowning out everything but my own breathing. He cut through a yard, Linda's yard. I cornered him by her garage. Hands up! He hesitated, then turned, and for a split second, lightning lit his face. It was her son, eyes wide, fear and arrogance mixing like oil and fire. Drop it! I yelled. He didn't. He ran again, straight toward the backyard I followed, until I heard a woman's voice scream, "Stop!" Linda. She was standing on the back porch, umbrella forgotten, mascara streaked by rain. "Please," she gasped. "He didn't mean—" "Tell him to stop!" I shouted. Her son slipped on the wet grass, falling hard. The metal pipe he'd been carrying clattered to the ground. I moved in, cuffed him before he could recover. "You're under arrest for vandalism, harassment, and attempted arson," I said. My voice was pure ice. He spat water, glaring up at me. "She told me to." The words froze her where she stood. "Jason!" she hissed. "Shut up!" He turned to her. "You said they were ruining everything. You said—" "Enough!" she screamed. But it was too late. The truth was out, raw and ugly like the night around us. By the time backup arrived, Linda was shaking so badly she couldn't speak. Her son sat in the cruiser, soaked and sullen. Parker looked at me. "You okay, Chief?" I nodded, though my hands were trembling. "Get him processed," I said quietly. "And get her a lawyer." He hesitated. "Sir, do you want to press charges?" I looked at the ruined mailbox, the soaked yard, my wife standing on the porch, clutching Emily. "Yes," I said, "every single one." That night, after the cars left and the street fell silent again, I stood alone in the rain. The house was dark behind me. Somewhere inside, Emily was asleep. Finally. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something close to peace. Not because justice had been done yet, but because the truth had finally ripped through the lies. But peace never lasts long when pride's involved. 2 days later, the media got wind of it. Police chief presses charges against HOA president's son. Reporters camped outside the subdivision. Cameras flashed every time I left for work. Linda's lawyer issued a statement. My client denies all involvement. Her son acted independently under emotional distress. Independent or not, she'd created him. His hate, his entitlement, his rage. Still, I didn't respond publicly. I let the case speak for itself. But then, the calls started. Blocked numbers. Threats. "You'll regret ruining her life." "You think you're untouchable?" The department assigned me extra patrols, but I knew better than to trust silence. Every night I still checked the locks twice. Every sound still made my pulse spike. Sometimes the worst damage isn't physical. It's the kind that lives in your head long after the smoke clears. The morning after the arrest, the neighborhood looked different. The air felt clearer, lighter, but also hollow, like a storm had passed and left everything too quiet. I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Across the street, yellow police tape fluttered in the breeze around Linda's house. Reporters were still parked down the block, waiting for a quote. When they saw me, microphones went up. "Chief Hayes, do you have a statement? Were you personally targeted? Do you think the HOA system enables abuse of power?" I didn't answer. I just stood, nodded once, and went back inside. Emily was sitting at the table drawing. A stick-figure family, me, her, and her mom, standing beside a burnt mailbox, a rainbow above us. She looked up. "Is it over now?" I wanted to tell her yes. I wanted to tell her monsters always get caught. But I'd been a cop too long to believe in clean endings. The department launched an internal review automatically. Even though I'd done everything by the book, protocol demanded it. I spent hours in conference rooms, reciting the timeline, replaying the footage, answering the same questions from different voices. Some officers looked at me with sympathy. Others with curiosity. Cops aren't used to seeing one of their own as the victim. The hardest part wasn't the questions. It was the waiting. Waiting for the reports, for the DA's decision, for the silence to mean something. My wife tried to stay strong. She'd pack Emily's lunch, water the plants, act like life had returned to normal. But I'd catch her standing by the window at night staring across the street where Linda's house sat dark and silent. 3 weeks later, I got the call. The DA was filing formal charges: criminal mischief, harassment, conspiracy to commit vandalism, and endangerment. Linda's son faced up to 3 years. She was charged as an accomplice. When the news broke, the neighborhood erupted. Some neighbors brought over casseroles, apologies, even small gifts for Emily. Others avoided eye contact, afraid of being seen taking sides. The next HOA meeting was the most crowded I'd ever seen. Without Linda there, the tone shifted, cautious, reflective. One woman stood and said, "We all saw what she did, but we let her do it because she scared us." Silence followed. Another man added, "We need to rebuild this place, start with compassion, not control." For the first time, I believed maybe, just maybe, the place could heal. The trial took months. Linda arrived every day in crisp suits, trying to look composed, but the mask cracked each time her son testified. He admitted everything: the late-night notes, the vandalism, the fire. He said she'd told him to teach them a lesson. Her lawyer tried to twist it. He misinterpreted her frustration. But the jury didn't buy it. During one recess, I crossed paths with her in the hallway. We stopped, 2 people bound by the wreckage between us. "You ruined my life," she said quietly. I looked at her, really looked. The woman who once towered over HOA meetings now looked small, deflated. "No," I said, "you did that yourself." She didn't respond, just turned away. When the verdict came, it wasn't dramatic. Guilty on all counts. Her son was sentenced to 2 years. She got 12 months probation and a permanent removal from the HOA board. The judge's words were simple: "You turned community service into community harm. Let this be a lesson in humility." I should have felt triumphant, vindicated, but instead I felt empty. Because justice doesn't erase what's been burned. It just stops it from spreading. After the trial, we tried to move on. The department gave me a week off. I spent it fixing the fence, repainting the mailbox, and planting new flowers in the front yard. Bright yellow marigolds, Emily's favorite neighbors, stopped to help. We worked together quietly, without speeches or pity. It wasn't about the yard. It was about reclaiming space, about saying, "We're still here." Emily seemed lighter again. She rode her new bike, a replacement from an anonymous donor, though I had a hunch it came from Parker. Sometimes she'd glance at Linda's empty house and ask, "Is she gone for good?" I'd smile softly. "For now. But remember, sweetheart, it's not about her leaving, it's about us staying." She didn't fully understand, but she nodded anyway. Still, there were nights I couldn't sleep. I'd wake up at 2 a.m., half expecting to hear sirens or footsteps on the porch. Trauma has an echo. It plays even when the world's quiet. One night I went outside, sat on the steps, and looked at the rebuilt mailbox. It was pristine again, gleaming under the streetlight, but my reflection in it looked tired. That's when Parker drove by, window down. "Still keeping watch, Chief?" I smiled faintly. "Old habits." He parked and joined me. For a while, we just listened to the crickets. Then he said, "You know, sir, a lot of us look up to you. The way you handled this, you could have gone off the rails." I shook my head. "You don't know how close I came." He didn't respond. He didn't need to. A few weeks later, I got an invitation, the Pinecrest HOA Reformation Committee. They wanted me to lead it. At first I laughed, they want the guy who almost left to fix the place. But my wife said something that stuck with me. Maybe you were supposed to be the one to change it. And maybe she was right. At the next meeting, I stood where Linda once stood, behind that same cheap wooden podium. I looked around the room. New faces. Familiar ones. All of them watching, waiting to see if I'd speak from anger or something better. "I used to think rules made a community," I began. "Turns out it's grace that does rules tell you what not to do. Grace teaches you what you should. Silence. Then slow applause. That night, as I walked home, the street felt different. Softer. Safer. Months passed. Seasons changed. The grass grew back where the fire had burned. Linda's house eventually sold to a young couple with a newborn. They waved when we met, nervous and kind. I helped them move a couch in. Gave them the same promise I'd once wanted to hear. You're safe here. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. But healing isn't a straight line. Sometimes when I drive past the old HOA office, I still think about her, about how power can twist into obsession. I don't hate her anymore. Hate's just a chain you wear voluntarily. Instead, I remember her as a lesson. That control without compassion becomes cruelty, that justice without empathy becomes vengeance, and that even good people, like me, can lose themselves trying to make wrong things right. A year later, on Emily's 9th birthday, we threw another party. Same backyard, same decorations. Except this time, the laughter was louder. Neighbors brought food, music filled the air, and the police car that rolled by just waved and kept going. When Emily blew out her candles, she whispered, "This is the best one ever." I smiled. "You earned it, kiddo." She paused. "Did Linda ever say sorry?" I shook my head. "No, but sometimes silence is an apology." She tilted her head. "What does that mean?" I knelt down beside her. "It means when people lose everything they fought for, they finally have to listen to themselves." She thought about that for a moment, then nodded solemnly, like she understood more than I expected. Later that night, after everyone left, I sat by the fire pit, the soft hum of crickets blending with the faint laughter echoing in my head. I realized something simple, something I'd missed through all the chaos. Forgiveness isn't about letting someone off the hook. It's about letting yourself off the chain. A year passed before I realized I'd stopped watching the street. For months after the trial, I'd glance through the blinds each night, waiting for headlights, a sound, some echo of the past. Then one evening, I looked up from my desk and saw nothing, just calm. And for the first time, it felt right. They say time heals. It doesn't. It teaches. What healed me wasn't time. It was the people who stayed when things got ugly. My wife, my daughter, Parker, even the neighbors who once hid behind their curtains. They showed up when the dust settled. They rebuilt what fear had broken. That's what real justice looks like. Not punishment, but participation. One afternoon, I visited the department's training academy to give a lecture. The recruits sat straight, eyes bright, uniforms crisp. I started with something simple. "Anyone here ever lived in an HOA?" A few chuckles, a few groans. "Then you know rules," I said. "But let me tell you what the badge taught me. Rules don't save people, relationships do. You can't enforce compassion with a citation." I told them the story, not the version the news printed, but the truth. How a woman's obsession with order nearly burned a family's peace to the ground. How a man sworn to uphold the law had to learn when to stand down and when to finally stand up. When I finished, the room was silent. Then a young recruit raised his hand. "Sir," he asked, "if you could go back, would you have forgiven her sooner?" I thought about that. "No," I said. "Forgiveness isn't something you rush. It's something you grow into. You forgive when holding the pain hurts worse than letting it go." A few months later, I got a letter. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwriting familiar, delicate, precise. "Chief Hayes, I've spent a year trying to understand why I did what I did. Power made me feel seen. Losing it made me realize how invisible I'd become. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope your daughter still smiles when she rides her bike. Linda." I read it 3 times before setting it down. Then I walked outside. Emily was in the yard, hair flying in the wind, laughing as she rode circles around the driveway. That sound, her laughter, was louder than any apology could ever be. I folded the letter and slipped it into the mailbox. Not to send, but to leave it there, as if the metal itself could hold a piece of the past and keep it from following us inside again. By the second spring, Pine Crest felt alive again. The HOA was no longer a courtroom, it was a community. We built a small park where the old meeting hall used to stand. Families gathered on weekends. Kids played tag. Dogs barked freely, unreported. One Saturday, Parker stopped by with his fiancée. He looked around, grinning. Hard to believe this is the same place. I smiled. It's not. That's the point. He laughed. You ever think about running for mayor? I shook my head. I've had enough politics for a lifetime. He clapped my shoulder. Then at least keep teaching. People listen to you. I didn't answer right away, but that night I drafted a proposal for a community policing workshop, teaching officers how empathy can prevent escalation. If I couldn't undo what happened here, maybe I could make sure it didn't happen somewhere else. Still, there were reminders. Every now and then, when the wind was just right, I could smell the faint trace of burnt metal from that old mailbox. Not as a wound, as a warning. That power in the wrong hands doesn't need a gun or badge. It just needs permission. And that's the part that haunts me most, how easily good people stay silent while bad ones get loud. So now, when I speak to neighborhoods or new officers, I tell them this. Silence is the fertilizer of injustice. Every time you ignore cruelty because it's inconvenient, you help it grow. Last week, Emily turned 10. She asked if we could invite the whole street again. We did. Same decorations, same cake, but this time, no fear. As the sun set, the cul-de-sac glowed with fairy lights. Kids danced, parents laughed, and for once nobody cared about curfews or ordinances. At one point, I saw a moving truck pull up down the street. A woman stepped out, gray-haired, slender, moving carefully. She looked oddly familiar. For a second, our eyes met. Linda. She wasn't moving back, just visiting, maybe helping the new owners. She gave a small nod, tentative, almost fragile. I nodded back. No words, no bitterness. Just two people who finally understood the cost of pride. She left before the candles were lit. But for some reason, when Emily blew them out, I thought of her and hoped she'd found her own kind of peace. Later that night, when everyone had gone home, I stood at the edge of the yard watching the last embers fade from the fire pit. My wife slipped her arm through mine. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I said quietly. For the first time, I think I am. She smiled. You kept your promise. What promise? That we'd live here, not just survive. I looked at the house, our house, glowing softly under the porch light. You're right, I said. We made it home. I tell this story now not for sympathy, but for reminder. Because everyone has a Linda somewhere in their life, someone who mistakes control for care, dominance for order. And everyone has a choice, to match their fire or outlast it. I chose to outlast it. Barely. But I did. And if you ever find yourself facing your own version of her, the bully, the bureaucrat, the voice that tells you don't belong, remember this. You don't have to fight with hate. You just have to stand long enough for the truth to catch up. A year ago, I was a man ready to move away, ready to quit the very thing I'd sworn to protect. Now, I'm still here, not because of what was done to me, but because of what we rebuilt afterward. Every scar on that fence, every smudge of paint, every laugh that echoes across this yard, it's proof that chaos doesn't win. It just tests who deserves peace the most. And peace, I've learned, isn't given. It's defended, sometimes with a badge, sometimes with silence, and sometimes with forgiveness. Final line. Justice made her stop. Forgiveness made me free.